Hi, this is Brian Levenson again, and we have another Mental Monday for you today. And I'm excited to talk to you about momentum. Momentum, it's everywhere. You watch SportsCenter tonight, you'll see some anchor talk about momentum. When I work with coaches, athletes, even people in the corporate space, momentum is always a word that I hear and I try to talk about with my athletes, with my clients, with my coaches. NBA Jam was a game that I played when I was younger, and you could even get on fire when you had momentum, and it could help you perform better. For those of you young kids, go check out NBA Jam, one of the great video games of all time. So momentum is everywhere in our society, but especially in sports. And I'm here to tell you that it's kind of a myth. One of the things I often talk about with my athletes is focus on the moment, not the And everything we talk about always usually comes back to the moment. So don't focus on the focus on the moment. And I'm going to provide some interesting research and some activities to show you what I mean about focusing on the moment. So the first question when it comes to momentum is, does it exist? Is it real? So from 2002 to 2008, there was a study that looked at NBA players. And they found that those players that made a shot were 3.5% less likely to make their next shot. So right after a made shot, their percentage actually went down by 3.5% as to whether or not they'll make their next shot. In addition, they found that those players shoot 16% faster. So they come down and they look to shoot a lot quicker, and a lot of times they take lower percentage shots. The last point that they made was that that person was 10% more likely to take the team's next shot. So I feel like I'm in a good rhythm, I've made a shot, I'm more likely to jack up another shot, and maybe it's not a high percentage shot for me. So they found that after a made shot, you're actually going to perform a little bit worse than after a missed shot. Another study found that a team that had made 6 unanswered points would actually perform worse in the next minute of basketball. So they found that they would perform 0.31 points less in that next minute. So they go on a little run, they get 6 points, maybe the team calls a timeout. The next minute actually found that the other team performs better than that team that went on the run. One last study found that there was no evidence for teams that came back and forced overtime that they were more likely to then go on and win the game. So you look at basketball, a sport that is seen as a sport of streaks and runs and momentum, and they're actually showing that momentum does not lead to better performance or winning games. So if we don't want to focus on momentum, what do we want to focus on? The moment. The old cliche, one play at a time, one game at a time. We want to make the right play at the right time. Take a sport like basketball, which is what we're talking about. The goal is just to make the right play at the right time. It sounds so simple, it sounds so easy, but oftentimes athletes get focused on the past or the future and they get away from just making the right play at the right time. Or they feel like they have momentum, they feel hot, so then they take a shot that maybe they shouldn't have taken. So if we can stay directing our attention to one play, the right play at the right time, that will lead to the best possible outcome. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this nickel out of my pocket, and we're actually going to flip this coin 10 times. So we're going to see how often it lands on tails and how often it lands on heads. And we're going to take note of whether the heads or the tails gathers momentum. So that's what we're going to do. All right? So I'm going to take this coin, flip it, and we're just going to see what sort of patterns it gets, and we're going to tally the tails and tally the heads. And you're going to do it with me. First one, heads. All right, so heads gets a mark. That could be a better mark. That one. All right, next. See how my flipping skills work. Heads again. All right, so heads is out in front, right? Heads, they come out 10-0 run right off the bat. Timeout called. Let's see if tails get something done here. Tails, all right? So tails is the next one. We got one mark for tails, all right? So 2-1 heads. Should it be heads or should it be tails? We'll see. Oh, it's heads. That's 3-1. All right, so after 4, we've got 3 heads and 1 tails. So some of you might be thinking, well, it's a 50-50 shot. Tails is probably going to make a comeback, right? Others might say, oh, heads has momentum. Heads is going to keep it going. Let's see what happens. Tails. All right, so tails fights back a little bit. Tails again. All right, so now is tails on a run? Does tails have momentum? Is tails going to be the one that carries it through? Let's find out. Tails it is, all right? So tails has now gotten 3 in a row and we're 7 in, okay? So should it even back out to heads or should tails keep going? Tails again. So think about this now. Tails really has momentum. 4 in a row. 4 in a row for tails. Can heads get this next one? We only have 2 left. We're going to do this 10 times. What's the next one? Let me flip it again. There we go. Heads. All right? So now tails had all the momentum, but heads tends to get it, right? I'll just hit the ground, and it's heads. All right? So heads then makes their own. That's 5-5. 5 tails, 5 heads, okay? The point being with all of this is that when you flip a coin, it's a 50-50 shot. This happened to work out 5 for heads, 5 for tails, but it could have easily been 7 tails, 3 heads, right? It can work out either way. And the point is that you don't want momentum to dictate your performance. You just want to keep flipping the coin. If there's a ball on the ground, you have a 50-50 shot of getting it. If you're playing an opponent, you have a 50-50 shot of winning. We want to just keep focusing, directing our attention to the moment, competing in that moment to try to win that moment. That's what we're going for. So momentum. I'm going to keep fighting the good fight and challenging the status quo, challenging my coaches, my athletes, my teams, my executives, and challenging them to focus more on the moment and not the I've given you some stats today to think about how does momentum impact performance? How does us believing in momentum impact our performance? And actually, does momentum really exist? Is it something that we really want to focus on? I would argue that it's not something that we want to focus on, and that it can serve as a distraction because you focus on the past or the future and not the present. At the end of the day, it's up to you to make the right play at the right time. That's it. Keep it simple. If you're a great shooter, you've missed your first 10, keep shooting. If you're not a great shooter, probably don't want to take those first 10 shots. And remember, it's a coin flip. Everything we do is a 50-50 challenge. Whether it's a tip or a loose ball or a mano-a-mano match in tennis, wrestling, or a sport like golf. It's up to you to direct your attention back to the moment. So with that, I want to thank you for tuning in for the Mental Monday. And remember, there's no good days or bad days, only moments. It's up to you to take the action and go win the moment.